Well, a very good afternoon and welcome to Runcorn here in sunny Cheshire. Now, look, election fever is all around. Look at this. This is the weekly news. This is the Runcorn and Widnes weekly news. Look, Reform UK is all over this paper. We've got Nigel Farage there, we've got Sarah Pochin. Now, the elections. There are local elections taking place, mayoral elections taking place, and of course this really important by-election in Runcorn. So I thought I would pop into Runcorn today. So I'm delighted to be here at the Royal British Legion Club, and I brought a few friends with me. Well, just a few. Now, let's just, I told you, they're noisy, they're a noisy bunch here. Let's just broaden this out to the national picture, because there are 24 councils out of 317 to play for. It is worth remembering the Labour government has denied the vote to 5.5 million people. That means 5.5 million people cannot vote. That takes in swathes of East Anglia, of Surrey, of Sussex, of Hampshire. Do you know what? That is a democratic deficit. That is not democracy. And it is, quite frankly, unacceptable. So let me just ask you a question. Why is there a by-election taking place here at all? Well, the answer is that the former Labour MP, Mike Amesbury, had a very unusual way of talking to his constituents. He thought that the best communication was to punch a constituent. He was actually sentenced to 10 weeks in prison. That was then appealed. He got a suspended sentence, and that would have triggered a recall election, a recall petition. But he did do the honourable thing and he stood down, and that is why we now have a by-election taking place here in Runcorn, and it is a very exciting moment indeed in British history. Let's just look back at the last general election. Now, this is a staunchly Labour seat, traditionally very, very Labour seat. At the last election, Labour got 50% of the vote, so it got 22,000 votes. Reform UK, a relatively new party, did extremely well. It came second here with 7.6 thousand votes. It is now worth remembering that we're, 7-8 months into a Labour government. I, in my lifetime, my political lifetime, have never met such a dysfunctional government. You have Rachel from Accounts making up economic policy. I think we can agree on that. Yes. So she's raising things like the employer's national insurance contribution. Then you've got Big Ange, who is trying to change workers' rights. Of course, employers very worried about the impact on their businesses. And then you've got this other character, this swivel-eyed, mad lunatic Ed Miliband. And, of course, his obsession with net zero, which means, of course, we're all going to be poorer and we are going to be colder as a result. I think this is actually a pivotal moment in British politics, and I think Reform UK can achieve a lot. Let's talk about this area. It's a really fascinating area, actually, because Runcorn sits on the southern side of the River Mersey. It has a very proud heritage. Indeed, it's just 15 miles away, actually, from the port of Liverpool. Now, in terms of the history, it was founded in 915 AD by Ethelred of Mercia. It was actually a fortified town. It was there to repel the invasion of the Vikings. But it really came of age in the Industrial Revolution, and that is because of the extension of the Bridgewater Canal, and that linked Manchester. It also linked various other parts of this area to Liverpool and also here to Runcorn as well. So it has a very proud history. But I suppose its zenith appeared in the Industrial Revolution. After that, it fell into decline and it fell into disrepair, and successive Labour and Conservative administrations have failed to look after this area. They have consigned it to the dustbin of history. But that all has to change. There are some very real issues here as well. One of the things that I looked up was the levels of child poverty. 25% of children are living below the poverty line in this constituency. That is unacceptable in a developed country. The most extraordinary thing is that 60% of the adults and carers who look after those young people are in employment. So that means there is something very big going on indeed. When you look at health inequalities, people in this area died 10 years earlier than their peers in other parts of this country. Again, shocking health inequalities, which we'll talk about a little later on. Crime. Huge problems in terms of crime. That's organised crime. It's also about looking after children. The fact is you've also got organised gangs. You've got the rise of the barber shops across this particular area. One of the biggest problems is drug crime, which is up by 146%. And when you compare Runcorn with other parts of this country, crime levels are running about 50% higher than comparable areas. And poverty, it's a huge issue here. In terms of the numbers of people claiming universal credit, it is up by as much as 50% when you compare it to other areas. Well, don't take my word for it. I'm delighted, actually, that I can be here and meet some of the activists, people who've been working on the campaign here in Runcorn. Let me come to you, Alexander, if I may, first. A very good afternoon to you.
David.
Tell us about the problems that Runcorn faces.
Runcorn's problems are similar across the whole of Merseyside. I come from a neighbouring constituency in Knowsley, just across the bridge here, and the problems are so similar. And I've been out with a group of 12 volunteers, and the response has been so positive and overwhelmingly supportive of what we're doing.
And tell me, so as I said, it's traditionally and tribally very Labour. What are people saying on the doorstep?
Yeah, I've found further you get away from the M25, people feel more and more forgotten by the major parties, Labour and the Tories. They just want change. They want to be represented by the people that are in government now, and we have to deliver for them.
And so on the doorstep, and when you're having those wide-ranging conversations, what sort of issues come up time and time again?
So immigration, the economy, energy prices, household bills, inflation. People feel poorer and people want more money in their pockets.
There is a lot of talk from central government about making sure the regions are represented around the country. Do you feel that that is the case?
No, not at all. I've been lucky enough to work across the country, and this is my home. I've always lived here, and you can see that this area has been forgotten in so many ways. Economically, socially, it has been a managed decline, which we need to reverse.
And so when you're out there selling the vision of reform, what do you say to people?
I just say, are you happy with what you've got now? You can see what reform bring with their policies. You've seen what disastrous policies Labour have brought in over the last 8 months. It's time for change, and we need to vote differently.
OK, thank you for the moment. NG, good to see you
good
as
to
well.
See you, David.
You've been out and about as well.
Yes, yeah.
What stories are you hearing from people on the ground?
Well, people are really fed up with Labour and Tories because societal decline of Britain, financially, culturally. When I took a leaflet, there is a little bit of red and blue there. So one guy thought, oh, I'm from Tory, and he started shouting at me.
Oh, really?
And then he said, I'm from Reform. He suddenly smiled and then welcoming. And few thought it's Labour. We don't want Labour here at all. So it's looking good for Sarah Pochin. People really fed up. Phenomenal response. And I'm happy to do more leaflets.
Were you surprised when you spoke to people on the doorstep? Because, as I said, tribally and traditionally, this is very Labour. It was seen very much as a working man's area and environment. So for a small, relatively small and relatively new party to make those kind of inroads is quite something.
Yes, it's a bit surprising initially because we have canvassed in Sefton, Liverpool. It's a hardcore Labour area. So it's 50-50. So people like you, some people totally hate you. But that's changing there as well. But in Runcorn, from day one, everyone's liking you. And no one ever said anything bad at all to me on our face. So,
well, maybe it's just you. Let's come to you, Lee, if I may. There's a lot of talk about reform doing well here. I think lots of people want reform. They want change. They see they're sort of oscillating between the two main parties, from Conservative to Labour, say, around the country. They don't see any change at all. I think that is exactly right what NG says. People feel much poorer, the cost of living. You only have to look at the prices in the supermarket. What are people saying to you?
The cost of living's a killer across the whole of the north of the country. So this is the beginning. Runcorn is where we're beginning. And if you see the people that are turning out to campaign every day, we had a coach load from Scotland earlier on this week that came all the way from Scotland just to campaign in Runcorn, because we have a united front for once, I think, in the north. We all know that the uni party doesn't work and we need change. And we're starting to see that across the whole of the north, and I think Runcorn's just the beginning.
And just in terms, I mentioned that Labour has been in power for what? It feels like an eternity, actually, but it is actually only 7 or 8 months. I mentioned it's a very dysfunctional government. What is the response on the doorstep when you talk about the government? They keep saying they're going to improve conditions. Actually, the thing they keep talking about is working people. Do you get the sense that the government is delivering?
I don't think the government even knows what a working person is. They've been asked on a number of occasions and failed to answer. And collectively, if you look around this room, you look at the people that are campaigning, people on the doorsteps, that's what unifies us. We are the People's Party. We are the people that are out working, that are out grafting, that have built. We're not racist. We're not at all exclusive in any way, shape or form. We are your day-to-day working people that have just had enough. We can't afford for the Labour Party to run us any further into the ground than they already have.
I mean, it's really interesting you talk about racism. You mentioned immigration there as well. What do people say in terms of immigration? It's not immigration per se. It's illegal immigration. It's unfair immigration.
Yeah, it's both like uncontrolled immigration. So Britain is a great country, so it's a welcoming country. People are good at heart. When I came here first 15 years ago, I loved this country, especially when I asked for an address to show me where I need to go. A lady came, walked with me for a mile, which doesn't happen in anywhere else in the world. So from that point to this point, the society is declining because of uncontrolled. You don't want to overtake one culture with other one. So now culturally Britain is going down, economically simultaneously, so people are fed up. Reform is not a racist party, neither right nor left. Nigel rightly said it's party of common sense. People are realizing that now. People think that we are a common sense party and not others. So they're proving us through their vote.
Well, we shall see. And just finally, if I may, Alexander, coming back to you, you mentioned you're campaigning for Sarah Pochin. I'm about to go and meet her. But just between you and me, what's she like?
She's really nice. She's really
I
do. But she's really authentic. She seems to know the area really well. She's got lots of ties. She understands the needs of businesses and people around here. So really good candidates to get behind.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much indeed. Well, as I said, Reform UK has chosen the candidate for the by-election, which is taking place here in Runcorn. Her name is Sarah Pochin. She is a former councillor for East Cheshire. She was also mayor from 2021 to 2022 of that council. Just before we meet her, though, let's take a look at her story.
My name is Sarah Pochin and I'm proud to be standing in Runcorn and Helsby for Reform UK. I'm incredibly proud to be British. My dad was in the army, so clearly there was a huge commitment to this country and defending this country. Family is one of the most important jobs that you can have. As a parent, it's our responsibility to pass on good core values to our kids. And quite frankly, I think that family is the bedrock of Great Britain. It's our foundations and it's what we need to be investing in. Community is about what we see every day. There's all these huge issues going on around the world, but when we step outside of our doors in the morning, it's about our neighbours, it's about our clean streets, it's about the environment in which we live. Young people today should be proud to be British. I've worked as a magistrate in the area for the last 20 years. And what that's given me is a real understanding of the problems that people have in their lives. We should all have certain standards of behaviour. Very recently, the last MP, to lose control like that in the street, I deal with that sort of thing all the time. Runcorn and Helsby needs a lawmaker, not a lawbreaker. People deserve to have somebody who feels passionately about the area and wants to speak up on their behalf. I feel that Reform UK represent my values. Labour failed us, the Conservatives have failed us. I am Sarah Pochin. I believe in law and order. I am Reform UK.
Well, you heard from her, Sarah Pochin. She says she is Reform UK. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Pochin! Well, a very good afternoon to you. Look, so much fame and adoration. They love you. Look, this is a very serious job. I know. I've campaigned a lot in elections for many years, actually. Why do you want to do it?
I feel so passionately that the people of this constituency need a strong voice. Clearly looking around, people have not been standing up for Runcorn and investment in Runcorn and putting the people of Runcorn first. And with all my experience working with the community, 20 years as a magistrate, a borough councillor, a mayor, I think I really have a lot to offer people here in Runcorn and Helsby.
And I think that's the case. The fact is, you know what the problems are and so on. So has that made a difference to you? The fact is that you can sort of change what you're offering?
I think because I really understand what people need to get a better quality of life, to get more fulfilment out of life, the basic services they need. And actually it's not that complicated, but because I understand also how the council works and local government works, I think that I can be a big asset to this constituency.
So I mentioned some of the problems here: child poverty, health inequalities. Obviously as a medic, that's something that interests me enormously. Crime, a big issue here. For me, this has an amazingly proud heritage, an industrial heritage, which has been allowed to decline. And in many ways, the people have just been ignored and forgotten about.
I think that's how they feel. And certainly our campaign office in Runcorn Shopping City, we've had an average of 50 people over the door every day since we've opened. And it's the same story. It's a story of people feeling like they've been neglected, feeling like Runcorn is a dumping ground, whether that's for, toxic waste or whether that's for illegal immigrants. And the feeling is very clear that the people themselves feel that they've been pushed out of public services, pushed down housing lists, GP lists, whatever it might be, and that they're having to sustain a situation. And no one's shouting for the people of Runcorn and Helsby.
I mean, it's quite interesting. You talk about illegal immigration, asylum centres, and so on. I read this morning Labour is closing one of the asylum hotels. Interesting timing, didn't you think?
Well, what a coincidence!
Yes.
Yeah. So the Labour candidate in this by-election very publicly welcomed illegal immigrants into Runcorn. Runcorn, which is one of already the most deprived towns in the country. She's welcomed them in, said that the council will put them up in hotels. A huge cost, as we know, to the taxpayer. Whilst the people of Runcorn, the local people, are struggling to get on the housing list, as I say. A lady came in to talk to me the other day, just one example. Her sister's had a baby. She's sofa surfing with a brand new newborn because she cannot get a house in a housing association.
So what does the council say about that?
Well, the council is not putting, in my opinion, the local people first. The council is housing, for example, here, very much a problem, illegal immigrants into these houses, which should be going to locals first, I believe. But somebody needs to be brave enough to stand up and champion this issue And clearly, the locals have been let down by the Labour administration. This constituency has been Labour forever, with a Labour-controlled council. Labour have not been standing up for local people and local issues.
I mean, I think that's the point NG made earlier, which is actually immigration, when it's done carefully and in a controlled manner, is a good thing. It's the unfairness of illegal immigration being put to the front of those queues, being put in hotels, being given priority over people who were born in this constituency.
Absolutely, and I think that's what's coming through. People feel that they have been treated unfairly. They are being treated unfairly. And money is being used to sustain the illegal immigrant community, which could be being used to regenerate Runcorn town centre, for example, which clearly has had no money spent on it. Well, I don't know, ever. You know, this constituency doesn't even have a leisure centre with a swimming pool. It doesn't have a cinema for people to go to. People have to travel out over the bridge, often into Widnes or to Chester. But to have a whole constituency with not basic facilities for families, it's clear to me that Labour have let this constituency down.
And I spoke right at the beginning of the proud industrial past of this area. I mean, it's an amazing story, actually, dating back to 915 AD. When you look at the jobs now, they're based around agriculture, sci-tech, Vauxhall, chemicals, Diageo. Those are important jobs. But if you were to be elected, how do you think you could regenerate this area?
I think that what Reform want to do is cut the waste that is being spent, whether it is waste on endless, translation services, whether that's with the NHS or whether it's with local council. I mean, I've got first-hand experience of that. Working in the courts for 20 years, I could see the money spent again on interpreters and that sort of thing. We need to cut this waste. We also need to cut the waste that's spent on the DEI, endless initiatives. Let's train our local police force in 150 pronouns. I mean, whoever thinks up 150 pronouns? We have to absolutely kick this into the long grass. And the money that's being spent there can be spent in the local community on issues that local people really care about. So the regeneration of the town centre, for example.
And at least yesterday's ruling from the court, at least we know there are two sexes now.
We do.
Which I thought we knew anyway. I was also looking up Halton Borough Council, 197 million in debt. You've got Cheshire West, Chester, 232 million pounds in debt. You cannot run a council if you're constantly in debt. Where does the money come from?
Well, absolutely. I mean, clearly, it is quite complicated. My experience on the council, has taught me an awful lot about where the money comes from and how it's spent. One of the biggest problems, of course, is so much of any council's budget is ring-fenced for adult social care. And clearly our system is failing and money again, waste. It's that word waste all the time. Wasted on middle management, wasted on not treating sort of not having a nice smooth flow from people, elderly people stuck in hospital to be dealt with out in the community or looked after out in the community. There's so many issues that haven't been dealt with, and it's not rocket science, but the money that's wasted on middle management in those sort of areas. Private healthcare trusts are charging a fortune to local councils to house our elderly population. We've got an ageing population, we know that. We have to stop this. We have to get people in that know what they're doing, business people in that understand this model, and make it work, because we can't sustain it the way it is.
And so knocking on doors, I know it's very hard work to knock on doors, to continually talk about what you want to do when you get elected. What's the response when you do knock on doors? And I've mentioned it a couple of times. This is a predominantly tribally, traditionally working class Labour constituency. But no longer, I think.
No longer. The first thing I should say is I never mind talking. I'm a politician. I can talk for England. But when we knock on the doors in every area of the constituency, we're getting the same message. People are let down by Labour. They feel that Labour, whether it's taking the winter fuel allowance away, whether it's altering the disability payments, that's all coming in, whether it's the changes in the 0 hours contracts, the national insurance rises, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. Everybody has been affected by this Labour government. And people want to find a party where they can put their vote. We're hearing time and time again that we're so happy to see reform because there's someone for us to vote for that represents change, that represents hope, and a brighter future. And more than anything, people are starting to be brave enough to stand up and say, I vote reform. Because historically, you know, we've had all sorts of allegations thrown at us about racism and this and that and far right. I mean, when did being a sensible, normal member of the community make you far right? I don't know how that happened. But the fact is, people are getting braver. And if we win here in Runcorn and Helsby, I promise you the whole country will be brave enough to stand up and say, we vote reform.
I think you're absolutely right. And of course, all eyes are here on Runcorn in the election, in the by-election, the local elections taking place, the mayoral elections taking place. You've obviously got a lot of very dedicated supporters and helpers here. For people watching at home who are undecided, thinking, well, maybe I will vote for Sarah, what's your message to them?
My message is, the Conservatives have failed us. The Labour administration is failing us. They've only been in power for 10 months, and what a mess they're making. It's only reform that will be brave enough, and I use that word on purpose, to stand up against the woke establishment and get our values back, be proud of our country and be proud of our British culture. So I would say vote reform if you believe in family, community and country.
Sarah, thank you very much for Well, the journey that Reform UK has undergone has been quite something. It started off as the Brexit Party. As you know, I have been with it all the way through. The metamorphosis from the Brexit Party to Reform UK. There is a mission, there is a vision, there is purpose behind all of this. Let's remind ourselves what the mission of Reform UK really is.
In the early hours of the 5th of July, after the result in Clacton, I said, we've dealt with the Conservative Party, now we're coming for Labour. Vote Keir Starmer for change. That was what they told us. And yet, if you compare and contrast who they think, these red wall voters, most represents change, they choose me over Starmer by 35% to 22%. Which party leader best represents working people? And on that, I've got an 8-point lead over Starmer. So I firmly believe that we are the party of working people. We respect working people, we want to help working people, and we notice that unemployment is now at a 4-year high. We believe we can and we will turn this around. Get the attitudes of people towards work, towards success, towards life, towards their community. We believe all of that can be turned around. We are the party of working people, and broken Britain deserves nothing less.
Well. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to meet the leader of Reform UK. He is the most accomplished politician I have ever met. He has already changed British history once. He's about to do it again. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nigel Farage MP. So, Nigel, you are turning into the most famous man in Britain. I cannot open a newspaper without your face grinning at me. You've been on an amazing tour around the country. You've been working very hard here in Runcorn. Your thoughts so far?
I'm not famous. I'm infamous.
You are infamous, there is no doubt.
Yeah, it's been. So this is day 4, week 3 of living on the road, because yes, I'm here to support Sarah's candidacy in this very important by-election. And interestingly, in Labour's 16th safest seat, one that we've got every chance of winning. It's a really, really going to be tight out there. That's exciting, but don't forget there are 23 county council elections going on, county or unitary, depending how they're defined. And we've got more candidates in the field, more vetted, I hasten to add, candidates in the field than either the Labour or the Conservative parties. Plus, there are 6 mayoral races going on as well. So this is literally. I have a few days off over Easter. What? I think I deserve it. I think I do deserve it. And then it's back on the road for the next 2 weeks. And I've been going around the country, David, and I've been meeting as many of the men and women that are standing for us as candidates as I possibly can, doing photographs with them, encouraging them. And the energy and the enthusiasm that we've generated in this party, and it doesn't matter whether it's an old Labour area like County Durham or whether it's a more Conservative area like Devon, wherever I go, there is an energy. And the other thing about reform, there's an optimism. There's a belief that we're at an historic moment where British politics can fundamentally change, and we can go on, and if we clear these hurdles, fight the next general election in 28 or 29 with a realistic thought of actually winning it.
And just in terms of the journey that we've been under, the party has grown exponentially, just in terms of professionalisation as well. Going around the country, there is a real sense that actually if you vote for one of those two main tribal parties, you will get the same results once again. When you talk to people in this area with Sarah, what are the issues that resonate with people? What is it that people are most angry about?
Well, cost of living, obviously. They've seen massive energy bill hikes. And it's funny, isn't it? Because Labour got elected saying that they would reduce energy bills by £300. As of the 1st of April, the average energy bill had risen by £281. So cost of living. Also get this, David, this constituency, there are huge numbers of people that have alarms that go in the morning.
For work?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That get up, that cross the bridge in many cases where most of the jobs are over the other side, some are here obviously, and a feeling that they're working harder and harder, they're being taxed more and more, and they look at people in their street who choose not to work, who live off benefits, who frankly have got the same standard of living that they've got. So the need for work to actually pay, that's very uppermost in people's minds. Access to a GP appointment, I mean, that isn't just Runcorn, it's the whole country, but then when you think that an extra 7.2 million foreign-born people have signed up with GPs in the last 10 years. It's a mind-blowing figure.
It is.
I mean, no wonder you can't get a GP appointment. And the other one is a deep sense of unfairness that young, undocumented males of fighting age can cross the English Channel in small boats, be put up in private houses, be put up in hotels, can be given spending money, free health care, free dental care. I mean, who can get an NHS dentist? And there are 750 of them living in the Runcorn and Helsby constituency.
I mentioned to Sarah, actually, the idea that Labour is now closing one of the hotels used for asylum seekers. Interesting timing, would you not think, in a by-election?
Yeah, but they're going to get put in houses. And
of course they are.
And you can canvass streets here where there are 10 men in one house or 15 men in another house. And, of course, I mean, the Labour candidate has, from the get-go with the vote, said that she welcomes these people into our country. And that's not fair. It's not fair on working people who are paying their taxes. It is not fair, on those that have legally come to Britain as immigrants and obey the law and work and pay their taxes. And it's absolutely not fair when it comes to social housing, because what you see are those that have come through that route are then waved through the system and given indefinite leave to remain, go to the top here in Runcorn of the social housing ladder. So I think it's that lack of fairness, but the sheer visibility of these young men in this constituency, I think it's a massive issue.
Yeah.
And do you see that as well, Sarah?
I do, and I know that in certain areas, as Nigel indicated, there are streets with 2 or 3 HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy, 3-bedroom houses with 20 men in. I've had ladies come through the door at the campaign office showing me videos of activity at 3 o'clock in the morning, these young men with knives, clearly drug dealing going on, girls involved. And let's not forget, these sort of HMOs and this setup, that starts to become a breeding ground for the grooming gangs, something that Labour, again, is letting everyone down on. So it's a real issue here. People are actually frightened to let their children play out on the streets.
And actually, Nigel, you were the first person ever to talk about illegal immigration, the number of small boat arrivals. I remember being with you when you made those original videos. Everyone laughed at you at the time. They're not laughing now because you were right from the beginning.
Yes, the Sunday Times described me as a sad, desperate, lonely figure. Out in, well, they're probably right, but, out in the English Channel. David, I could see that if you come somewhere illegally, get given everything, and your chances of deportation are hovering around about zero. I said in 2020, you might as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover, you know, everyone welcome, because that indeed is what's happened. And I think there is, you know, here and elsewhere, massive upset. And you know, if you at home feel this, you know, runformreform.com, sign up, pledge to us, help us, support us, because we're the only people who've got the, I'll say guts. We're the only people that have got the guts to say that all the while we're stuck inside this completely outdated, 3/4 of a century old European Convention on Human Rights with its associated court in Strasbourg, something that our own judiciary uses and leans upon to stop deportations. Unless we deport, they'll keep coming. We're the only party with the guts to say, let's leave the ECHR and genuinely get back the sovereignty of our borders.
And just before we go to questions, I saw Keir Starmer sidling back up to the EU. You and I were in the European Parliament. We got the Brexit deal. Well, we never really properly Brexited anyway, but that's not the point. The fact is you're seeing Keir Starmer going behind the scenes and cozying up to Europe, trying to get agreements on terms of agri-foods or whatever it is. That's pretty galling for those people who voted Brexit, and the majority of people here did vote Brexit.
Yeah, this is a big Brexit constituency. And I think they had two realistic expectations. One, that the numbers coming into Britain would reduce, when in fact they went through the roof, the Boris wave, as it's known. And secondly, anybody in business, anyone running a shop or doing anything, thought the rules might get easier, and actually in many cases they've got harder. And now we see Starmer, as you say, signing up to food standards, signing up to veterinary standards, signing up to goodness knows what else, rumoured that next month, even on defence, we'll start to move closer to the European Union. I mean, the whole thing is not just a portrayal of Brexit, but it actually is throwing away the advantage that we've got. We have a big advantage in the modern world in that we're flexible, adaptable, we can do deals and trade with whom we want. But it seems that, I mean, let's remember, I mean, Starmer was one of those people campaigning for a second referendum. He never really accepted the Brexit result. And I think that rift that emerged between these old Labour-style constituencies and the Labour Party, it's happening again.
I have lots of questions from people here in the audience. Rory O'Brien, where are you? Somewhere in the room, hopefully. Rory has asked this question. Nigel, how do you feel about the discussions around free speech in pubs? Are you worried that freedom of speech is under threat in this country?
Well, this is the sort of banter law that they're talking about, where if you and I are having a conversation, if the bar staff get upset, we can effectively be kicked out of the pub or maybe even prosecuted. I've always had this thing, because I don't know about you, but I quite like pubs.
I like them.
I've spent a bit of time in them over the years. And I take the view that every pub's a parliament. In the local pub.
Yeah, totally.
In my home village. We discuss, is the vicar a Marxist? Should,
another pressing issue.
Should a German be managing the England football team? Has he been put in there deliberately? And we just, the sort of over a drink, having a chat, and every pub's a parliament, because it's where we can go and have a chat, and very often somebody in a pub will say, have you thought a bit like, have you thought of it this way? And you go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll change my mind. So pubs are part of that sort of parliamentary free speech.
And of
tradition.
course, so many pubs under threat.
And so many pubs under threat to begin with, but I'm afraid everything about Starmer's government leans towards two-tier justice, two-tier policing, a two-tier society, two-tier care. Sarah, of course, knows more than me about most of this, given her time, 20 years as a magistrate.
So that's interesting, actually. I do have a question on that from Simon Evans, who says, what would a reform do to change the current two-tier justice system? So that is very pertinent.
Very much so. I mean, I actually resigned after 20 years as a magistrate to fight this seat. But I have to say, I was honestly getting towards the point of resigning on principle from the judiciary system. How can the Sentencing Council tell judges and presiding justices that, you cannot send someone who is from an ethnic minority to prison without doing a full report or something? The whole basis of our justice system is that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law and are dealt with the same. Well, what's happening now, the Sentencing Council are totally undermining the whole basis of British law, the law that we gave the rest of the world. Let's face it. So I was close to resigning on a matter of principle anyway. And don't get me started on things like prison spaces, because at one point magistrates were actually told, you can't send people to prison for a while, please, because there's no room. Well, how can that be? You can't operate like that.
But it also goes back to Nigel's point, which is you've got uncontrolled immigration into the country. So if you've got another 7-8 million people in this country,
that's right.
There's no infrastructure.
David, I think the population increase, net population increase of 10 million in the last 19 years, I think the effect of that on the quality of life of everybody has been astonishing. Everything from GP appointments to traffic on the nearby M6. It's even worse up here than the M25. It's really, but the impact of that on everyone's quality of life has been enormous.
Let's talk about farmers. Andre Morgan Short has said farmers are a key part of our community. Labour and the Conservatives have let farmers down consistently badly across the years. What will reform do?
Well, for a start, we need to totally kick into the long grass this rule about the family farms and the inheritance tax. We need to support farming. Farming, I don't think really people appreciate that the food in our supermarkets should be good quality, local farm produce. And, that's just going out the window. So they're being done with, they're being targeted with their inheritance tax. I feel that Labour has always had a problem with the rural community generally, and everything about farming is being attacked at the moment. Reform, totally support our farmers. The farmers know that we support them, and we can see that, out and about. But reform are 100% about protecting that important part of our industry, but also our culture.
Well, it's also, it's so multifactorial, but also it's just a lack of joined-up thinking, isn't it? You're a great proponent of the countryside. Yeah. And yet we're seeing elderly farmers crying because they're worried about the inheritance tax, selling off their land. But then you've got Ed Miliband putting solar panels on prime agricultural land.
I had a letter last Sunday from a 90-year-old woman, West Sussex, dairying family, saying my husband John has died. Son Tim is running the farm, but I'm 90. Will I live another 7 years?
Yeah.
And if I don't live another 7 years, we'll have to sell off a chunk of the farm that'll make it unviable. This assault on the rural communities is awful. It's worth thinking about this. The English countryside has a very special place in our hearts. And it's admired around the world. People can say, wow, isn't your country amazing? Well, one of the reasons for that is that families, in some cases for centuries, have husbanded and stewarded that land. And that is under assault. And when it comes to solar, don't even start me. I mean, solar panels manufactured in China, predominantly by slave labour, and I don't know whether you'd notice, we're not a particularly sunny country.
No, really.
So I find the whole thing very, very dispiriting. But I actually think that the farmers can win this, and I'll tell you why. This seat is 70% urban, 30% rural. And it's worth those traditional Conservative voters in the rural bits thinking to themselves, if I vote Conservative on May the 1st, it's a wasted vote because only reform can beat Labour. And I think that's a very, very important point to get home. But Labour at the last election won nearly 100 seats in rural or semi-rural areas. Never happened before, right? Those MPs, they quite like being in the Palace of Westminster. They quite like the lifestyle of being an MP. And they know that this issue could cost them their seats. And I want the farming community and those that support them to go on protesting with their tractors. I was in a tractor this morning with a loud halo. I want them to go on, going into the market towns, protesting, trying to get as many members of the public on their side, because those MPs are going to panic. They're going to realise this issue will cost them their seats. And I think there's a real chance of getting... Well, it won't be Rachel Reeves, because she'll be gone, obviously. She'll be in the Labour Party's complaints department, probably, or something like that. And I think we can get a big change to this proposed law. I genuinely do.
I hope so. Sarah, let's talk about small businesses. This question has come from Martin Sadler. What can be done to encourage small businesses to flourish? There are too many restrictions, whether they're local, commercial pricing, also the balance of online retailers and actually trying to, I'm just paraphrasing, but re-inject some energy and enthusiasm back into the high street.
Absolutely. My view on online retailing is we've unleashed the beast. We can never go back on that. It is what it is, and I'm sure all of us at some point use Amazon Prime and it's there the next day. We can't move away from that. But the point is that market towns, well, all town centres can flourish with the right support and the right investment. And one of the things that immediately springs to mind is how is it that virtually every town in this country has now got 6 to 8 Turkish barbers, for example?
Well, it's a very good question.
I've been ranting on about this for years. Even at the general election launch last year, Richard and I talked, Tyson and I talked about Turkish barbers. And the other day, I was in St Neots in Cambridgeshire, going down the high street, and a barber's shop, they knocked on the window and I kept winning. And I said, do you mean you cut hair? Do you have customers? Haven't you got a Lamborghini out the back? And it got 10 million views on social media. And this week, the National Crime Agency have gone in and raided 295 premises up and down the country. And I think what the NCA should do is look at my social media feed more carefully and follow it more regularly.
Well, also your social media feed about potholes as well, filling them in as well.
Oh, yeah, with flowers.
You're with flowers. I thought you did a great job there. Nigel, let's just talk very quickly, if we can. The NHS, you and I have spoken a great deal about the NHS. It's my passion.
Yeah.
There is a real issue about social care. This has come from Malcolm Webster. We're constantly told the NHS is broken. But actually the main issue, according to him, is social care. I would agree with that.
Social care is a massive problem. No one has found the answer to it. And I mean no one has found the answer to it. What I am struck by, though, David, the one positive suggestion I would make on this, be interested to get your feedback on it, is the separation of healthcare and social care seems utterly bizarre to me, because one is so dependent upon the other. So it seems to me those two organisations have to be closer. As for the cost of social care, it is a massive, massive, massive problem.
Yeah, and of course, Sarah, you made the point about getting people into housing. And of course, what we need to do is to allow elderly people to be moved into some sort of social care provision. That then frees up the homes, and then the families can move into the homes. So it's a very complicated kind of answer to where we need to go.
It is complicated, but it's also a little bit about people's values and culture. So, you know, when my mum died and my dad was poorly and needed looking after, you know, I took him into my house. And I do find it very interesting that our culture these days is automatically to put our parents into a home. If you look at other cultures, it's very much about, you know, you look after your children, but you look after the grandparents. And I do think that we could go some way towards improving on that whole idea. Yeah.
Well, dare I say it, family, community, country.
Exactly.
It's the slogan. It's on the boards. Let's just ask you, Nigel. This is Jandavira Davy. How do you believe the Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman aligns with Reform's stance on gender identity? I know your answer already.
Well, I think we reached peak lunacy, didn't we?
Yes.
We reached peak lunacy in Scotland, where a violent double rapist put on a blonde wig, was rebranded as Isla Bryson, and then was sent to a women's prison. And I think that was peak lunacy. And I think the Supreme Court judgment shows you that actually the pendulum of common sense has come back to where it needs to be. And it was very interesting. I heard Sebastian Coe on the radio this morning saying, hooray. Because frankly, for any human being that's been through male puberty to be contesting against adult women in sport. I mean, there was the case Leah Thomas in America. I mean, 6'3", with a lunchbox that would have made Linford Christie jealous. I mean,
you can't take him anywhere.
But I mean, the whole thing was ridiculous. So look, you know, there are those in society who feel they're born in the wrong bodies, and you know what? We'll be respectful of them. We won't be discriminatory against them. We'll understand who they are. There's no problem with that. But I think the extent to which this was being abused and women were just not feeling safe in their own spaces, yeah, it's a judgment for common sense.
Sarah, one of the other things that I think people feel very passionately about is crime, law and order, feeling the police aren't on the street enough. Your thoughts really on priorities of police? It seems the police are very heavy-handed if someone writes something on social media.
Do you know what? The whole two-tier system that we're talking about, policing is a classic example. We should, in my view, go back to having police on our streets. Here in Runcorn, you know, there's so much drug dealing going on. Some of the places we've been canvassing, honestly, I'm surprised we're not all as high as kites by the time we get back to the campaign office.
So what are you seeing on the ground?
Well, literally people blatantly sat in their gardens, you know, smoking cannabis, no police. As I say, people have come in with videos of drug dealing going on in the middle of night, no police. There's clearly antisocial behaviour going on, no police. And don't get me started on shoplifting and all of that, because the poor businesses now, I mean, they don't even bother calling the police. You know, people come in and clear the shelves if they fancy it. Nothing is done. And this gets back to the absolute basics of law and order, which is something I feel very passionately about. And it comes back to the basis of put the police on the streets, do not spend thousands of pounds on another manual about either, you know, what a woman is or, you know, him, his, her, their, them, whatever it might be. For goodness sake, let's go back to basics and spend that money on police on the streets, doing what they should be doing, not lying down next to Just Stop Oil or, and you know, or whatever they're doing.
Taking the knee.
Yeah, taking the knee.
To the Marxist Black Lives Matter.
But also, it's not just about having police on the streets, it's about the police enforcing their duty to arrest criminals and deal with it, rather than, you know, cautions here or there. And that's if you can find a policeman.
Well, quite. We're coming up to Easter. Just a couple of quick questions. We're coming up to Easter. This is a really good question, actually. This is Kevin McEwen, who says, will reform re-implement the fundamentals of Christianity being taught into schools? My son left primary school and has never heard the Lord's Prayer.
I've just recorded this morning my Easter message, which will go out and which will say that I hope you all find time over Easter to spend time with your family, your loved ones, those that are close to you. But I'd like you, if you can, to spend a minute, whether you're Christian or not, to reflect on what this holiday actually is. And it goes back to the Judeo-Christian roots of the entirety of Western civilization, of everything this country was built upon. And I said, isn't it funny that our other political leaders are very happy to celebrate Ramadan, very happy to celebrate Eid. I mean, in London, the Mayor of London, you know, the whole of Regent Street, they've got Ramadan celebrations or whatever it is. Not one of them ever talks about the fact that this is a fundamental Christian period of the year. So that's my Easter message. And, you know, I've said before 1,000 times, we're in economic decline, we're in societal decline, we've talked about that with law and order and everything else, but we're also in cultural decline. We're not teaching our children who we are as a country, where we come from, and what the values are that made this country great and that really, really matter. And it's absolute, total cowardice from a whole series of political leaders. And as I say, whether you're a churchgoer or not, whether you're a Christian or not, it's not really the point. It's understanding what underpins everything that we are.
Sarah?
I couldn't agree with that more. We will not be, for example, campaigning on Easter Sunday. It's a Christian day and it should be respected. We are a Christian country with Christian values. That's and that's another fundamental part of our society, which seems to be we have to now apologise for. Well, reform will put a stop to all of that nonsense and reinstate these core values.
Well, I'm pleased to hear it. You can watch my breakfast show on Talk TV on Easter Sunday. Just a quick plug. And then finally, if I may, just a rather more of a fun one. What's your favourite Easter egg?
Oh my gosh! It has to be Cadbury's.
Does it?
Even though I think they've gone American now, haven't they?
Yeah, they have Hershey's.
I'm sorry about that. Oh my God, I probably shouldn't have
At
said
least
that.
it wasn't Chinese.
Well, it's true. They're not making it yet.
And Nigel, are you a whisper man, a cream egg, or a lint bunny?
So I try really hard.
Do you?
To keep my weight down to a reasonable level. But the other day in the car, my press man, who I won't name, popped into the garage and came back with Cadbury's cream. Who wants a Cadbury's cream egg?
I love them.
And
Wow.
I don't think I'd eaten one for a couple of years. Absolutely blooming lovely.
Gorgeous.
I'm gonna
They're smaller though, aren't they?
they are small,
Yeah.
aren't they? Good.
But
Brilliant. Sarah, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time. Nigel, thank you very
Okay,
much
well done.
for your time as well. So there you have it. Without doubt, Runcorn needs reform. You've heard from the volunteers, you've heard from the candidate herself, you've heard from the leader of Reform UK as well. Look, we have to stop the terminal decline of Britain. Britain desperately needs reform, and reform desperately needs your vote. So please vote wisely when it comes to the elections on the 1st of May. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and I bid you a very good afternoon.